Good day, welcome back. This is the next video in my series on corresponding squares, and we're going to look at another composer today from around the turn of the 20th century, Hermann Neustadtl. Probably go with that pronunciation for this episode, although it's quite possibly completely wrong. And we're just going to look at that simple study there because it's very easy to sort of understand the process of applying corresponding squares to which were initially not really thought of in terms of corresponding squares, more in terms of opposition and so on. But we'll reframe them in terms of corresponding squares, and you'll see how there's sort of a one-to-one correspondence between those two things. Okay, so let's have a quick look. Let's go to the capture screen here. And this is the author we are talking about. This is the Arvis webpage. There's not much good information on Neustadtl on Wikipedia, so we just have to do with what we have here. He is from Czechoslovakia. So we've got a few players from Czechoslovakia. We'll say that in a minute. So actually, obviously a very strong center of chess culture. And Neustadtl was one of the sort of active composers and players there. You look at the text here. In his youth, he played in some magisterial tournaments in Germany. I think that's probably a sort of a translation problem. It's kind of like master tournaments. Reminds me a lot of Roger Delgado and the different names they gave him in Doctor Who to avoid the fact that he was the master. And he has a bit of a master look to him as well, right? Well, probably not enough hair on top. Now, the interesting thing about Neustadtl is that he actually did. It does look like, if you look at this link here, he created the Sonnenborn-Berger score, which is used in chess tournaments. And it sounds like he came up with it first, and then Sonneborn and Berger came up with something a little bit different, which was called the non-Neustadt Sonneborn-Berger score. And then, for whatever reason, Sonneborn-Berger has sort of become the name for it, even though it sounds like Neustadt came up with it first. Anyway, so obviously he's quite involved in sort of chess-related issues at the time. Okay, so now let's quickly have a look and see how he fits in the scheme of things. I've run my little composer chart, and you can see we've got here Philidor we did, and he's Neustadtl here. And you can see he's around the same time as Dutina, a little bit earlier than Dödler. So we've basically got three Czech players in that late 19th, early 20th century period. And then you can see that this is a very sort of Central Europe-centric chart. Germany, Italy, Austria. So gives you an idea of, where a lot of the main thinkers were, which I think is quite interesting. Later on, we'll see if there's a few more Czech players. That does seem to be fairly well represented. And then, so get that out of the way. And what I want to look at, so we see that position. I'll just run, right, okay, let's have a look at that. You can see there's a position there. Now, remember how this works. So I'll just change it to result is a draw. Yeah, that's what I want. So I can move the black king around. Remember how I'm using Pygame as the sort of the core charting aspect of it. But the idea is take the position and consult the table base and work out positions which are drawn. So if we look at this, if the black king is on e2, then you can see we're trying to move the circled piece, which is the white king, around the board. Are there any other drawing squares? And the only drawing square in that case is e2. G2 is the only drawing square. So that's kind of the mutual zigzagging position. Draw versus win, not win versus loss. If you go back to D2, you go to earn H2. So this is actually, you can see it's very much close opposition and then distant opposition. But obviously we can frame that in terms of corresponding squares. So the key square, let's say the key square are F3, F2, for instance. Then we'll just say that probably square 1. And then square 4, 5, and 6. And there's one other square changing. If black ever got to F4, then you've got to be on F2 to prevent the black king from advancing to either E3 or G3 in that instance. So I hope that gives a good sense. And as you move, the D file is fairly restricted, but as you move further away, then obviously there's some sort of counterattack possibilities for white, which would show up as those green squares. On the other hand, if white remains defensive, then E1 and G1 hold the balance, and the same for this. But we'll probably just map it out to those squares there. So that gives you sort of a picture of where, if we're back here, then white's got a bit more squares he can be on, anything in that little box, and over there as well, a lot more choices, but we're just in these ones. Okay, so I hope that gives you a good graphical representation of where white and black have to be in terms of corresponding squares. Actually, I noticed something funny as I was doing this sort of correspondence and opposition, but then it's the mirror image. Can't actually put it on G2 the way my program works, but obviously you can just see the G2 need to be corresponding, so that if black's trapped on the H file for whatever reason, then white has exactly the same drawing method. So now what we'll do is I'll close that and we'll go to the board. Just make that a sensible size. Okay, you can see the position there. Let's just put that first only drawing move in on the board. So let's kind of say that the key squares are those squares. Put those squares there. Black gets there, could well be winning. And then so now we just do what we've done before. Got to cover access to the key squares, and then you go back one more. And you can understand why. I mean, this square you're covering there, got to cover the same. This square you're covering there, the same there. They're doing the same. So that's kind of the sort of the way it works. We'll just do the continuation on the Harvest website first. Let's see what line they gave. Okay, King H1 was the first move, and then King E2, King E2. Obviously, we're going to go to G2. King E3, obviously going to G3. King D3. Now, this is the point which you've got to be very careful, because a lot of people might say, what about advancing onto the key squares? But then the problem is that we're going to lose out here. Just have a look. Lost the opposition, and we're going to lose our pawn. Yeah, so it's all about taking just opposition, and only when black moves on to the squares marked 1, 2, and 3, then we go into the squares marked 1, 2, and 3. Oh, I've just realized I missed this other square I pointed out earlier, just for completeness. Okay, so that's a simple little study, not a complicated one, and just want to sort of show how we can go back to earlier studies which weren't viewed as corresponding squares and apply corresponding squares to them and give you a good picture of what the solution to these problems are. And at the same time, we're doing a little bit of tour of the history of the composers of that period. Okay, hope you enjoyed that, and thank you very much for watching.